The whisper started the moment he arrived, slithering through the concrete veins of Black Iron Penitentiary like a cold draft. They called him Kale. Not Kale the Killer, or Kale the Butcher, just Kale. The simplicity of the name was unsettling, hinting at a reputation so vast, so self-evident, that no descriptor was needed. He was the deadliest prisoner in the world, and he resided in cell block Omega, a section so isolated it felt like a prison within a prison. Warden Thorne, a man whose face was etched with years of managing the worst of humanity, would often find himself staring at the grainy surveillance feed of Kale's cell. The man himself was unremarkable, mid-40s, lean, with eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. He spent his days in quiet contemplation, sometimes reading a tattered philosophy book, sometimes simply staring at the bare wall. No outbursts, no demands, no attempt to escape. This unnerving calm was, to Thorne, far more terrifying than any violent outburst. Violence, he understood. Kale was a variable he couldn't calculate. The legend of Kale wasn't built on a single act, but a mosaic of impossible feats. Before Black Iron, he had been in Phantom, a whisper in the global underworld, responsible for the impossible disappearances of dictators, the silent collapse of cartels, the surgical dismantling of entire criminal empires. He was captured not by force, but by a bizarre, almost accidental convergence of circumstances in a remote fishing village, a place he was apparently visiting for a quiet retirement. Even then, the arresting officers reported a chilling sense of being allowed to take him, as if he simply grew tired of the game. One sweltering afternoon, the fragile piece of Black Iron shattered. A riot orchestrated by a newly arrived, charismatic gang leader named Apex erupted in cell block Gamma. Apex, a brute with a penchant for chaos, had managed to rally nearly 200 inmates, overwhelming the guards and seizing control of key sections. The prison was in lockdown, but the internal battle raged. Thorne watched helpless as his officers were cornered, and the prison's reputation, his career, teetered on the brink. "We're losing Gamma, Warden," shouted a panicked guard over the comms. "They're trying to breach the armory." Thorne's eyes flicked to Kale's feed. The man was still sitting cross-legged in his cell, utterly oblivious to the pandemonium just blocks away. Or was he? Suddenly, a new voice crackled over the prison intercom, distorted but clear. It was Apex. "Listen up, Warden. We're taking this place. And if you don't meet our demands, we start with the hostages." A chilling silence followed. Then, the sound of a single rhythmic tap-tap-tap began to echo through the prison's ventilation system. It was faint at first, then grew louder, seemingly originating from the deepest, most secure parts of the facility. In cell block Gamma, a few inmates paused, confused. Apex barked, "What's that noise?" The tapping continued, a steady, almost hypnotic rhythm. It wasn't Morse code, not that anyone could discern. It was just tapping, but then a strange thing began to happen. One by one, the rioting inmates started to look around, a flicker of unease in their eyes. The tapping seemed to resonate with something primal, something deeply unsettling. Arguments broke out among the gang members. Accusations flew. Paranoia, thick and suffocating, began to spread like a virus. "You're holding out on us, aren't you, Marco?" Apex roared at one of his lieutenants. "You knew about this." "No, I swear." Apex. The tapping intensified, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. It was a sound designed not to communicate, but to unravel. Within minutes, the organized chaos of the riot devolved into internecine squabbles. Inmates turned on each other, convinced of betrayal, fueled by an unseen, unheard terror. The guards, watching in stunned disbelief, saw the riot leaders collapse into infighting, their unity dissolving into a desperate, every man for himself scramble. Thorne, witnessing the inexplicable implosion, felt a cold dread creep up his spine. He zoomed the camera in on Kale. The tapping had stopped. Kale was still sitting, but now a faint, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips. His eyes, usually placid, held a knowing glint. Later, after the riot was quelled with surprising ease thanks to the inmates' self-destruction, Thorne reviewed the logs. No one had entered or left Kale's cell. No communication devices were found. Yet, the tapping had started precisely when Apex made his demands and ceased the moment the riot turned inward. Thorne walked down to cell block Omega, standing before Cale's reinforced door. "What did you do?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Cale looked up from his book, his eyes meeting Thorne's through the small window. "I merely reminded them," he said, his voice soft, almost melodic, "that every man carries his own prison within him, and that the deadliest weapon is often just a thought." Thorne didn't understand how. He never would. But he understood one thing. Cale wasn't the deadliest prisoner because he could kill with his bare hands, or because he could escape any lock. He was the deadliest because he could dismantle the human mind, unraveling order into chaos, not with force, but with an insidious, unseen touch. He didn't need to break out of black iron. He could break black iron from the inside, simply by existing, and that, Thorne realized, was a far more terrifying power. The world slept, oblivious of man who could unravel it with single, unburdened thought.